fall in the contracts management space. What we do is we help our customers manage their contracts more easily. And we fall in the realm of the post-signature side of the contracting process. So we help our customers organize their contracts, digitize and extract key data from their contracts so they can report on it or do additional analysis to make decisions.
What kind of learnings did you have from being on the sales side of a legal tech product? Like, what did you think about the Indian landscape at that point of time?
At that point of time, there was really no Indian, to be honest.
Now we're going to just delve into product management, and I really want to learn all about it because I just hear it as a fancy buzzword all the time, especially being thrown around in the context of startups.
In Pramata have kept me going for the last, I think now it's what, my 13th or the 14th year here. The product, I truly believe it's transformational. From a business standpoint. And I believe that from day one, and we've had our journeys of different things with it. The second is the leadership. Our CEO's vision and his ability to think in an innovative way that has further led to, staying there. So when you have a great leader and a great product and the surrounding team is awesome, it's like you're part of a big mission. So that's the thing that, as I would say, that's the thing.
What other mental models you had to really completely change about the way you look at the product when you started actually working in product management?
You're actually executing the vision. What do you need to do from that standpoint, right? Really figuring out how do I break the roadmap into phases of what I want to do and things like that, right? And when I talk about customers, here what I mean is B2B companies. And the users usually from these organizations could be from the legal team, could be from the finance team, could be from the sales team. And they all access our, secure self-service product that we call repository as a service, or RaaS in a short form. Tech is going to be a part of that world. If not now, at some point.
Mm-hmm.
So keeping that in mind and keeping an open mind towards it, I don't think it's a big problem for the younger generation. They're already surrounded by it. But it's going to happen. You'll become obsolete if you don't really keep that in mind and an open mind.
Hi, Vaishali. Thank you so much for being here today and for agreeing to speak to Prolawgue. For our audience, Vaishali is currently product manager at a legal tech company called Pramata. We'll learn more about what Pramata does and what Vaishali does there. But thank you so much for being here today. And thank you for taking the time out on holiday, I would say.
Well, thanks for having me, Shreya. I think I'm looking forward to the conversation. This will be a lot of fun.
Great. All right. So, Vaishali, usually how we run it is that we walk through your journey chronologically and sort of try to figure out how you ended up in a very, very niche space, at least in the Indian jurisdiction, which is product management for a legal tech company. And I'm looking forward because I think it's the buzzword and I'm equally excited to learn all about product management myself. So you did your master's in law from Duke University. How did you decide on that university? And did you do a general master's or did you do something specific?
I think when I started thinking about applying for a master's, I had decided that either I get into some of the top 10 or just drop it altogether, because law school is a pretty expensive deal, right? So if you're going to spend that kind of money, you might as well go to, either way you want the best experience, but that was the thing. So I applied to about 5 or 6 schools. It's like now about 10, 12 years back. So I'm jogging my memory now a little bit. But it came down to between NYU and Duke that I got into. I chose Duke because the class was smaller. It wasn't like there were 200, 300 LLM students like that. It was about 70, 80 students maximum. And their diversity rate was very high. There was only me and one other Indian in the class.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that was one. And the other is cost of living wise as well, North Carolina is much cheaper than New York any day. Duke's brand is pretty good. It was still in the top, 5 and 6 at that time itself. So I was like, okay, this kind of works out that way in terms of it. Courses wise and faculty wise, both schools have the best. Can't really, compete on that front. But these were the grounds for really picking Duke at that time. And I did more of a general, masters than, specific focus on one area.
So is there a reason you chose a general master's?
Duke's course itself is structured that way. You can make it very, specific if you want to, where you can just focus on, like these and say this is an LLM in corporate law or whatever it is. But Duke's course itself is more of a free flow. You can choose what makes sense for you and then add in the majors that you want to do. I did this because honestly, I'm a very, it was my first time out of the house, to be honest with you. And also I'm an extremely introverted, shy person. So I also wanted to do some courses that would take me out of that introversion, and already it does in those schools, but like things like where you can do negotiation courses and all that, right, which are not very heavy from a bookish standpoint, but more putting you out there, right? So I took a mix of courses that would force me to bring my shell out a bit. So that's what I focused on doing. Most of all, it was to just get the best out of that experience, because I don't think once in a lifetime, right, you don't end up doing that over and over again.
All right. So I think right after Duke, you started working with Pramata, right? How did that happen, and how did you learn about Pramata's operations in India?
So when I was in law school, I interned at a lot of law firms and a lot of other places. And as I went through that experience, you kind of understand the impressions of the places you work in, right? So I kind of realized that I might not want to join a law firm. I didn't rule it out completely, but I felt like maybe in-house is something that I wanted to pursue more. I didn't know if I was fully cut out for a law firm at that time. I didn't know about what exactly I wanted to do, but I knew kind of like what I didn't want to foray into at that point. So when I came back, I started looking for in-house opportunities. And honestly, I stumbled on Pramata pretty accidentally. It was just someone just forwarded me this profile. They had advertised on Naukri. I somehow had missed it, but somebody had, forwarded it to me saying, hey, just take a look. I don't know if it's of your interest. And I just read through it, and it just seemed intriguing at that point. And by then, I had already interviewed with another in-house position in Mumbai already. I was waiting on the, whether the offer is going to come through or not. I called up Pramata and asked them, what is this position about? And they told me at a high level, what the product was and what they were trying to do. I was just a little intrigued, and they just told me, why don't you come down? And I was at Hyderabad at that time. They were like, why don't you just come down, meet us, think about it? And I was like, okay, Bangalore, I have friends there, nice place. I'll just also go down and also meet them. So I came down, and the funny thing that happened was that they were inducting a bunch of people into the company on the day I joined. So they made me sit through an induction. So it's like, we just get a feel of what we do, right? And that was really like a very interesting experience as somebody who had no connection to the company, was just inquiring. And that was my first gut instinct that these people think very differently. Right? That's the first thing. And then in the interview, I met some really cool, interesting people, and just their outlook and their energy. I'll talk a bit about what the product does in a bit, but the concept at the time and the way, the people I interacted with, I was pretty sold. I was just like, this is something that, I just want to try. And it was like, my second job. So I just thought, okay, what's the risk here? If I don't like it, I can move on, right? And your early 20s are about that, right? You might as well take all the risks that you can take at that time. And so even today, I still hold by it. I think the people and the products still, are just as fresh in my mind from an innovation and standpoint that I still continue. That's what made me, like really join them. Not look back since then.
Yeah, you've been with them for some 10 years. Perhaps you could help us understand a little better what Pramata does and what the product is.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to share that. Since we're talking about the legal tech space, Pramata would fall in the contracts management space. What we do is we help our customers manage their contracts more easily. And we fall in the realm of the post signature side of the contracting process. So we help our customers organize their contracts, digitize and extract key data from their contracts so they can report on it or do additional analysis to make decisions. And when I talk about customers, here what I mean is B2B companies. And the users usually from these organizations could be from the legal team, could be from the finance team, could be from the sales team. And they all access our, secure self-service product that we call repository as a service, or RaaS in a short form. Why repository as a service is also because it comes with a powerful engine that we call the effortless contract AI. And this consists of technology combined with an expert assist AI team that's there. And that includes lawyers, financial professionals, data scientists, who actually make sure that the data coming out from the AI is accurate. And at the same time, wherever the AI falls short, they pitch in. So our customers don't have to do any data entry or manage any of that. We handle making sure that all the contracts are up to date and highly accurate, both for historical documents and ongoing documents. So that's essentially what Pramata does.
So it's not just the product, right? There's also like a light service that comes with working very closely with Pramata. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. So it's not a product that you just download and throw over the wall and do that. It's essentially with that you get an entire assist team that helps you deploy the product and also helps with adoption and things in your organization with it.
So you didn't really start with Pramata as a lawyer, right? You started as a delivery lead. How did you, you did speak about deciding on Pramata, but how did you decide to sort of make that shift away from a court legal role?
From what I explained about what Pramata does, you can still see it's in the legal domain, right? It's still around, we're heavily centered around contracts, right?
Right.
So when I started out learning the fundamentals, which was basically learning how to review contracts really well from a business context and how our users consume, this information that we provide them from the contracts. So with that context, I really felt, okay, it's not that I'm jumping completely away. I'm still applying the context of what I understand from my domain in a different way. That's the reason why, I was like, okay, the shift is there. It's not a traditional approach of applying this thing, but it's a completely different approach. But it has a huge impact on business at the same time. So that's how I made that decision. And a delivery lead at that time was someone who managed projects also, basically ensured that the deployment happened. So I ran a lot of projects working directly with customers and our US team as well. So that was the thing. So there was a lot of understanding more. I can tell you now, we've worked on over a period of 15 years, 9 million contracts Pramata has done in different domains, in different types of docs. So I've seen a whole range of things. So I think there's still a knowledge that you're gaining, right? It's not that it's something completely out of the realm of things.
Okay, and just to understand this a little better, Pramata operates in what all jurisdictions?
Right now, we are headquartered in San Francisco, and our Bangalore office is the only other office that's there, which is a subsidiary of the parent company.
I see. All right, great. So just to understand a little bit more about your journey at Pramata, you also worked in the sales department. Then you sort of moved to operations, right? So how did you get into sales to begin with?
So I think it's so I spent a few years, like I said, doing the delivery lead side. And then as the company scales, right, opportunities come up on how they want to scale the organization with different functions. And what we ended up happening in Bangalore was that we started a few more functions. And one of them was, a sales solutions team in Bangalore, which is basically supporting the sales team in the US. By that, what I mean is we ensure if you're doing any proof of concepts or anything like that, when you're talking to customers, we actually here would do that work and actually kind of demo that stuff to customers and all that. And at the same time, if we got the deal, we were the ones who would translate it back to the operations team over here and make sure, the implementation is as per the spec. So what I would say is it's actually sales solutions. If I, that, call it out that way. That's really what it was. So I got an opportunity to found that team here in Bangalore from scratch, thinking through it. Initially it was just me and one other guy. Then we thought through the kind of skills we needed, then really built that team ground up to support the sales team in the US. But because of that, I was able to, sit in sales conversations also, because you are supporting the whole process as well, and right, how prospects look at your product, how do you want to navigate those conversations. So it was pretty, I honestly, I would say that was a turning point in my career to take on, that kind of a opportunity.
So what kind of learnings did you have from being on the sales side of a legal tech product? Like, what did you think about the Indian landscape at that point of time?
At that point of time, there was really no Indian language, to be honest, because when I joined Pramata, it was about 2008. And I think this team was somewhere 2010 or something like that, 2010, 2011, that, we formed this team. And honestly, I think the word legal tech didn't exist in anybody's dictionary. It didn't exist in mine, to be honest. So I don't think what people understood at the time of, and I'll just answer the part about India first before I get to, the other part of your question. The only thing people knew about legal tech per se was everything was LPO. Processing, outsourcing thing, right? That's all they understood. There was no concept of legal tech in India. So I don't think there was any reference point of any company over here that was doing something like what we were doing. Now there are quite a few, but back then there was nothing. The only people would always confuse us as LPOs, and we used to keep clarifying we're not an LPO. That's the thing. But what I learned, I think the biggest thing that I learned is to really understand what a business problem is and what are you trying to solve, right? Like really listening, what's the market and what's the customer telling you, right? And really trying to abstract what's their business problem, and then thinking through your solution, how do you position it to them in that context? It's not about just taking a product and saying, hey, buy it. That's not going to happen, right? You have to really understand what is the customer's problem, what's their maturity in dealing with this problem so far in their organization, and how would your product fit in that context. So I think that's one. The second thing is you don't directly say no to your customers. You have to figure out a way to navigate the conversation. They might ask for the sky, right?
Yeah.
No is never on the table. So you have to figure out a good way to come with a point of view. The one thing that I learned, which we still follow even today in Pramata, is don't go in there and ask them what they want. That's also not a good idea. You come in with your domain expertise and tell them this is how we think about it. Now let's mesh where you guys are at, right? And then when they ask for things that may be a little outside of what you may be doing at the time, how do you figure out either innovative solutions or figure out a way to keep that for something that you can upsell into or something like that? There's really no. So it's navigating those conversations is what I would say is the other thing that I learned. A bit of an art and a science, you could say, but which you could say for most things. Yeah, and having a lot of energy. If you are in the selling something, you need to be the upbeat. You're really excited about pushing what you're doing as well, and understanding the mood of people in the room.
But it must really help to yourself truly believe in the product and the potential of the product.
Oh yeah, you nailed that point. Honestly, two things in Pramata have kept me going for the last, I think now it's what, my 13th or the 14th year here. The product, I truly believe it's transformational from a business standpoint. And I believe that from day one. And we've had our journeys of different things with it. The second is the leadership. Our CEO's vision and his ability to think in an innovative way that has further led to staying there. So when you have a great leader and a great product and the surrounding team is awesome, it's like you're part of a big mission. So that's the thing that as I would say that's the thing. Totally. Yeah.
Great. So and then from sales you moved to the operations side. Like, how did that happen? Was it also a consequence of scaling up?
Yeah, actually, yes. So we were starting to grow. We were starting to get funding and things like that. So we
Mhm.
needed to really, which is for any company, right? As you start doing well, you need more investment to scale further and things like that. So there was another organizational shift where our roles changed again, and as a result of that, I got the opportunity to take on the solutions part. Stayed with me. That's part of the operations, but
Mhm.
they added on additional teams, which was the implementation team and also like customer success, which is handling like support and things like that. So all of that came in as a foray. I did that for about a year and a half, and yeah, that was an interesting experience. I mean, for I moved out of the country, so I had my role changed again after that. But that's how I spent about a year and a half doing that, and that's a lot of that is uh, really understanding the kind of resources you have and how do you deploy them to
Mhm.
get things done, because you're working in a budget of what you can do. How do you motivate people to get things done, and
Yeah.
handling a lot of pressure from that angle. And it's a lot of people management as well. That's more on that end. Sales solutions team are much smaller, niche,
Mm.
but when you get into operations, it's a large gamut
It's
of.
everything, right? Like, I mean,
Yeah,
sometimes I don't know where to draw the line. And is there any line to draw when you're talking about operations?
really, there isn't. You're spot on. I think my colleagues who are running, the entire operations would totally agree with you. Their foot is in everything in that sense, because everything is your responsibility to get done, right?
Mm.
I think there were about, at that time, we had about 70, 80 lawyers and financial professionals under that operations team at that point. So there's a lot of people management as well from that context, and also big responsibility to develop the next layer of management, right? Because you have to hone leaders who can drive those teams and things like that. So that was one thing that I learned during that time period. How do you identify talent, and how do you kind of like help hone the next layer and things like that? Because you can't do everything. I can't manage all of it, right? So I think that's one of the other areas that I would say that I picked up from that experience.
Great. I think now we're going to just delve into product management, and I really want to learn all about it because I just hear it as a fancy buzzword all the time, especially being thrown around in the context of startups. So, firstly, like, was it a conscious decision to move to product management, or it was a lot of happenstance?
I pretty much think that's my career path has been a lot of open mindedness to things coming my way. I moved for my husband got transferred over to Egypt, so I moved to Egypt
Wow.
for a few years, and because of that, obviously, I couldn't be on the ground running the role
Hmm.
that I was running. And actually, honestly, to be blunt, I really quit at that time because I thought, okay, fine, like what am I
Hmm.
going to do? I'll come back when I come back and think about what I want to do. But the Pramata is the kind of unique organization that really recognizes and hones talent. If I may humbly put myself in that bracket, that's there. And they came up with this idea saying, you move, it's okay. But
Hmm.
why don't you move into a different role? And we will see something that, given your time zone as well, you could work a lot with the US team because it's much better
Hmm.
than, the India
Yeah.
side of it. You can overlap a lot with the US side. Why don't you foray a little bit into product? We'll see how it goes. So that's how, very gingerly I put my foot in that space. And to be honest with you, I had no idea what product management really even meant. I don't know if even today someone can define it fully, but I really had no idea. And when I moved at that time to that role, I was more on our customer facing side, which is how is it consumed by our customers, right? From a front end perspective. And I was actually learning, okay, how do you handle, people bringing in bugs? How do you get it prioritized? I was like literally like stepping stone basics of understanding that. But the real turn happened when I moved back to India a year and a half, 2 years later. They directly said that I would take on the earlier what I mentioned was our effortless contract AI, right? Which is
Hmm.
our engine to actually help deploy a lot of the product. Owning that, I think that's where the journey really started for me from a product management standpoint. And to be honest, extremely overwhelming I had really no idea how do you think of objectives and a roadmap and what do you prioritize and how do you look at the whole thing. And I actually went back to my CEO saying, I don't want to do this. I'm not sure if I'm cut out. This is the first time I had doubts on a role because it was so daunting. He just came back and said, you might not be seeing the progress you're making. That's one. The second thing is give anything at least a little bit of time. A year, you will then know whether you want to do it, don't want to do it, whether you're good at it, you're not good at it. You can't make a decision in such a short span. But having said that, if you still don't want to do it, totally fine, move you out. But I continued then for a year learning the hard way. Okay, everybody will throw 101 things at you. You need to take a step back and think about, okay, what is this product doing? What is it really solving? What are the bottlenecks that are happening as you're trying to use this product? Really learn how to distill those thoughts correctly and then look at, okay, what areas do I want to attack? So that took me like a lot of trial and error to really learn how those skills, right? Because it's very different from, I think my solutioning background helped a little bit, but I think that's I learned on the job. It took me a good year and a half to really understand what this is that I can hone. I don't know if I fully answered your question, but
no. So I'm trying to understand a little bit better. You've touched about how you changed the way you thought about things, right? What other mental models you had to really completely change about the way you looked at the product when you started actually working in product management?
I think, see, for any product manager, there are two things, right? From a product strategy standpoint for any company, the product management team is the glue. They are the, what you would call the moral center of the direction of the product. So you really need to be the gatekeeper of the product in the direction that it's going. That's something I've never done. I've always been like, I'll take the product and figure out how to configure it and do what I need to do. But I've never thought about, okay, there are 101 things that people are coming with. Is this aligning with our strategy? Is this aligning with the vision of where the product is going? Like changing that mindset. And this is where now, earlier how I told you that from a sales and that end, you never say no.
Yeah.
Product management's role is just saying no.
I know.
Just saying no. So I had to switch over to that mode. And I think my CEO used a good analogy for the way he explained this to me, earlier on. He said a good product manager is a good editor, is a very good editor. They know how to edit out, what's needed, what's necessary, and remove all the noise. So you need to learn to edit things very well. And the no comes from the editing, right? Whatever you edit out, just that's the thing. So I think that learning to understand, I have to hold the vision. That's a very tough job. And you don't have, what you will realize with anybody who's a product manager is they don't have authority. Zero authority. You're not doing that. All you have is influence. So you have to, so that's another thing I needed to learn. How do I influence people to understand where the product is going and pivot them into that direction? Because I'm not running operations, sales or anything, right? They're not reporting to me in any way. I have to guide them. So the first thing I had to learn was how do I become an influencer versus my other approaches of doing things, which was a very, very tough balance. Learning to say no, that's one thing. And I don't know if this is something that all product managers go through, but for me, the biggest challenge, I think, from a mental model shift was learning to work with engineering. I don't come with any technical background. I'm a hardcore like lawyer by education, right? I mean, I've done the 5-year course, then a master's, and then gone through that whole thing, but never done anything where I had to really deal with engineering, other than going and asking them, something is not working, can you help me make it work, right? So learning to, the biggest skill I had to also catch up on is learning to break down the problem in such a way that the engineering team can consume it. And at the same time, give their input on how it should be built. And taking that back, saying, hey, this is the approach we're going to take to build this out. This is how it's going to work out and all that stuff. Learning to understand what they're saying, I think that was a very big skill for me. I had to go like, explain like I'm 5. What are you saying? So that's I think those were the 3 things I would say. Really learning to edit, learning to say no, learning to be an influencer, and last is really learning to work with engineering, because I had Not that even today I have any tech skills per se like that.
Yeah.
I can't code and all, but really understanding how to work with them, I think was another thing that came in. So those were huge shifts from anything I had done before, which
Oh.
explains to you why I wanted to run away.
Yeah, I can imagine. So I'm actually wondering, is it tougher to manage engineers or is it tougher to manage lawyers?
I always say it's harder to argue with engineers than it is with lawyers.
Okay.
They are extremely logical. They're very similar to lawyers. They're extremely logical. So it's very hard to and a good engineer who knows his stuff, who also understands business, right? Will come up with terrific arguments of why something should be done or why or should not be done and things like that. They're tough cookies. They'll definitely hone your debating skills pretty well.
All right. And since you mentioned that how you are now sort of handling product and working very, very closely with engineers, and a lot of people I've spoken to are always wondering what kind of tech skills are required to sort of foray into legal tech. So where do I start as like a completely non-technical person?
That's a very good question. I don't know if this is necessarily specific to legal tech. Anybody who's foraying into tech,
just being able to leverage tech better, right? As a professional.
I don't think you need technical skills per se, because I might be biased because I didn't come in with any technical skills out of the box. But what I would say is you really need to understand, business problems very well. I know I'm harping on this again, but if you don't really understand that, it doesn't matter what the tech world is telling you, right? That product is solving something. What is it really solving? Why is it solving it the way it's solving? And these are very common sense things. They're not necessarily tech skills. I think if you don't understand that, no matter what tech skills you bring in, you will not be able to really foray into that. The second thing is, I will say that, and I'm going to put it more in a soft skill point of view, because I think tech skills, you can go to Coursera, all these things, and learn a lot of stuff. But if you look at practical reality, I think curiosity is key. You really have to have a very curious mind to, understand, okay, what's going on? What's the innovation behind this? Why are they doing that? I think that's one. Passion, right? That's very critical. You talk to any product manager, you'll see the passion in the way that they talk about things, right? And explore products that are out there, right, in your free time. And what I would say is, it's not necessarily you need to go and find a legal tech product to do that. Take one of your everyday products and just wonder, what are two things I really like about this, right? That would tell you something behind that, to think about the logic behind how you would look at that. This is somebody who gave me a tip very early in my career, saying, think about that. Don't go in and try to find something. You use Gmail. Why do you like Gmail so much? What makes it so good for you, right? So that will hone your mind to think about technology that way. And in your day-to-day life, where is technology already playing a big role, right? Whether you're using social media or whatever, you'll notice small things in all these products, right? So if you put a little bit of focus that way, you'll understand, okay, so this is thinking behind doing this, right? So I would put it more practically like that. The other is, this is a very Indian cultural thing that I would say, network, talk to people.
Yeah.
Talk to people in the space, whether they're in legal tech or whether they're in product. Really talk to them about their experiences, like, you and me are talking now, right? About how they forayed into it, what they abstract from, these kind of things, what are the challenges they look at. There's nothing like it, because there's no reference point. Even if I give you a book, and I've read a lot of books on product management, it's very hard unless you really talk to someone and unless you get into it. There's really no reference point to explain this that way. Over a period of time, as you start foraying into it, you will know where you want to spend a little bit of upgrading, understanding your tech skills. Instead of going in and saying, I'll go learn this coding course, which I don't think will necessarily help you. But if you think about business and how products are designed, then you'll know the design thinking behind it. So that will help you then foray further. Then you can, as you start getting good at it, you will start knowing where do I want to hone something, right? Where is it difficult for me to understand something. I want out of the box say you could do all these courses, but you wouldn't really know how to apply them because we come from such a very different background.
Right.
The thing.
So I'm actually going to ask you a different question, which is not talk about a book or a course about product management, but perhaps if you have a resource in mind, a book or some blog or whatever, which just helps me understand the principles that go into looking at a product a certain way. Like you spoke about design, right? What are the kind of things I should perhaps be looking at?
Okay, so one of the books that I've read, which is very anybody would really understand it, is it's this book called Product Management in Practice. Okay, and it says a real world guide to, I had noted it down in case you asked me this question, a real world guide to the key connective role of the 21st century. It's by this author called Matt Lemay. He very simply explains, what are the boundaries of how you think about product management, right? If you're someone who's a product in product strategy, how do you figure out, okay, organizational goals versus bringing teams to execute the vision? But if you're a product manager, you're actually executing the vision. What do you need to do from that standpoint, right? Really figuring out how do I break the roadmap into phases of what I want to do and things like that, right? I'm not trying to get too technical on this.
No, absolutely. Yeah.
This book outlays that pretty simply and really well. And what are the overlaps of roles that you really need to play in that context? But what I told you earlier, right? The things that you don't have authority and you're an influencer, that means you really need to be a good listener. You really need to be you really need to know how to navigate conversations well. Communication is extremely critical in a product management role. Everything can go haywire. Not that it's not necessarily not in any other role, but this one is where you are the bridge, right? You're the bridge between the tech teams, you're the bridge between the stakeholders, you're the bridge between the market as well. You're right in the center. So you need to be
sort of the translator, right? You're taking the conversation of one group and redoing it for the other group so they can talk to each other also. Exactly. Like the interpreter.
Yeah, exactly. And all of them will come with their own stuff. Engineering will also come and tell you need to do this if you need to scale. So deprioritize that. Like they will also come and talk to you that way, right? So, and the market will tell you, hey, our sales team is hearing so much from the prospects. When are we getting this? Your ops team will come and tell you that, okay, I can't implement faster because it doesn't exist, right? So you'll hear all of that and you have to figure out how to channelize all those conversations. For me, I think I'll go back to the other point I said. It is both an art and a science. It is both an art and a science. From the way you navigate the conversations and way you handle understanding what you need to focus on, that's a bit of an art. Breaking down how you solve those problems, that's where the science comes in. One simple tip I can give people is learn to ask for metrics. Because people will come up with 101 requirements. Ask them, okay, how often do customers tell you about this problem? How many of those users are of this kind of a thing, right? If someone is complaining about the time to value, really, how manual is it for you? Really, like get numbers helps you, then makes the decision also further. I did a lot to avoid numbers, but but I can tell you a good product manager will know where to ask for the right metrics. Don't be a stickler for it that, you only will deal with it if metrics are there, because numbers are not also perfect in terms of some of the story behind them, right? So I would say that's one skill. Get comfortable, really asking for metrics to back with that, study them. Also, when people are talking about the problem, they usually are talking about something. They don't know where the problem is. They're just telling you something is not working. So you have to string the story like an interview to understand, okay, where is the problem emanating from and where do I need to solve it, right? So that's those are the things that I would say. But this book helps you distill that further. I think I can ping you the name later if you want.
Yeah, definitely. We'll put it in the description of the video.
Yeah, I pulled it out just in case. Here.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, I refer to it every now and then just to see some of the things. And also any new product managers join, I use it sometimes to talk through some of the expectations with them as well.
Great. So just coming back to you being in the legal tech space for some 10 odd years now, right? What are the monumental changes you've seen in India and also globally, because yours is a global product?
That's a very interesting question. I think globally they're way ahead, no doubt. I think India has always been a slow adopter of any technology that way, right? That's true. And legal tech were even more slow, to be honest. Globally, I think if you look at Europe, Singapore, and Australia and these regions, they've done a lot. The US as well, but they are way ahead. Their governments are investing in legal tech, in like justice and these areas. So those places you could see a lot of progress that is made. And of course, a lot of people who are doing product, I think you yourself are in legal ops, right? You can a lot of the law firms there are adopting much more of the things that need to be done, right?
100%. Like, I mean, just sheer numbers tell you a very different story.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot more awareness on their end. And I don't think they're just sticking to thinking about it as legal tech. I recently saw someone who was doing something in tax tech, really managing how you handle your compliances from a tax standpoint. And this is not legal tech, it's tax tech. But for me, I was like, oh, it still falls under that foray, right? So if you look at it globally, they are way ahead. And the fact that governments are investing a lot of money in it is pushing it further. And there's a lot of tech fests, and specifically from the legal side, that happens on those fronts, right? And it's the one thing with the law is it's so broad. There's so many areas that you can bring in technology in, right? The justice side is one, the corporate, and we are doing the contracts management from a post signature standpoint. Somebody else deals with it from a drafting standpoint, right? Then there's people who deals with compliances in the company, whether it's building products which help you with handling sexual harassment or anything like that, right? Those forums that they create where tech helps you handle that kind of stuff. Or domestic violence cases. They are finding ways to bring in technology that helps speed up these kind of things, right? So I think globally they're way ahead. India, I think in the last 5 years, we've woken up a bit. I would say we've woken up quite a bit. There are a lot of companies who are doing things in the contracts management space, as I've seen. There are also other organizations like Agami and all who are more in the justice side of things, right? And then there are people who are also looking at making online dispute resolution easier. Like I spoke to a company called Cord, I think recently. Very interesting technology on how to make the whole process of doing, your hearings better, filings better, digital assistance in court conversations, all these things, right? Transcription, everything. They look at that, which nobody would have even thought of, that's a product you can fully build as a package and give out, right? And right to information, there's a company called RTI Wala that's dealing with, helping the masses file RTIs. Yeah, so I think people are waking up to it, and I don't think all of them are necessarily lawyers. There are people who are finding the problems that need to be solved and are doing that. While the tech part of it is exploding, no doubt, I think the only drawback in India that I see so far is the transparency around the explosion of this tech is minimal. There's hardly any conversations. You're doing a lot of work, Shreya, thankfully for that, right? But it's a black box. Trying to find somebody who's in this space, who has this experience or these things, right? It's a lot of work. So I think that's the area I think we really need to do a better job in connecting more people in this front. Traditional lawyers connect a lot, but on this front, I don't think that side of it is the thing. The tech is exploding. There's a lot, but I think the awareness of the market opportunities and the awareness of what's going on in the conversations around it is minimal almost.
Are there any conferences perhaps you may have attended within India, or anything online that you attended in a hybrid mode that anybody who's trying to,
in India, I don't think I've attended anything so far. But there is one tech fest. I think it's called the Law Tech Fest. That's actually done out of Singapore. And but they just finished their tech fest. I think.
It's called Tech Law Fest. Yeah.
Tech Law Fest. Yeah, that's pretty good. You get a lot of context on, but it's focused a lot in Asia. I mean, less to do with this, but at least you get a lot of context on emerging trends and things like that. They also talk a lot about of the kind of skills you need in this like, new age lawyers, the way they should think about things like that. So I found that pretty helpful. But again, it's very skewed towards their area of the world, right? Which is fine. Knowledge is something that you can pick up.
Actually, I think the videos are available. So if I'm able to source it, I'll perhaps put the link in the description.
Yeah, that's the only one I have been able to abstract something from. I think there are a few in the UK as well, but so far I haven't really tried anything. There is, I think the group that we connected on, they try to have conversations around, right? She breaks the law.
She breaks the law, yes. I mean, they definitely had one that I attended. But I think they do it pretty on and off.
Yeah. But they're trying to, connect. And the amazing thing is they're trying to connect women in the space, right? Not just traditional lawyers, but non-traditional lawyers as well in the space. So I think, that's the only other one I know, and which is little bit active in India, maybe.
Yeah, you picked up the point about a new age lawyer, right? So in your mind, who is that, and what are the kind of things that a law student should perhaps be looking out for?
That's a very interesting question to answer. I'm thinking how I would actually look at it. See, I think the first place, the recognition, I don't know how much the law schools have picked up on the trends that are happening, right, in the foray of the areas we are talking about.
That is my sense.
Yeah. I think that isn't there. So it's a bit of a disadvantage for law students, honestly, that, they're really not going to see that side of it. What I would say is realize, even if you are going to be a lawyer who's doing chamber practice, or who's going to be, out there practicing this thing, or you're in-house or whatever it is, tech is going to be a part of that world. If not now, at some point. So keeping that in mind and keeping an open mind towards it, I don't think it's a big problem for the younger generation. They're already surrounded by it. But it's going to happen. You'll become obsolete if you don't really keep that in mind and an open mind. So I think that's one. But if you're going to foray in that direction, right, where you want to take a path down the tech side of it, there's a lot of grunt work to learn from. You'll not pick it up like, you'll go in and think it's fancy, I'm going to ideate a product. That's not going to happen. Learn the fundamentals really well, do the grunt work. It'll teach you a lot of stuff. Then you'll know how the products get built, right? These are the two things I would say. I mean, from what you would have an open attitude. It's not gonna help otherwise. That's the thing that I would get at, which I think it's a little generic. I know something you could say for a lot of things, but honestly speaking, without that, I don't think I would have been able to foray into so many things. What I've realized as I spoke to my peers, or even I speak to other people, lawyers have a very linear thinking, right? We have this one road that we are on, and then we just keep going on that path, and we think that's the only path to head towards.
I think what's adding to that is this general sense that hyper specialization is the new thing, even at like a student level. So then I know a lot of people were just picking up very niche areas without, even on the law side, without really understanding the complete fundamentals of where that came to be from.
Yeah, that's true. I think, see, you could get excited by something and move in that direction, which is what you're referring to, right? Maybe they're really inspired by it and all that. You can't skip the basics. You have to really understand the basics to do that. But the peer pressure to stay on it was much more in my time. I think now at least people are more open-minded. The peer pressure to stay in traditional law backgrounds, that unless you're a practicing lawyer or you're doing, in some top law firm, that mindset, right, is something that channelizes people to just stay in that thing. If I succeed here, I'm successful, right? You need to break that thing for sure. And that's what I was talking about from a linear mindset, right?
The metric of success is still, I think, very similar.
Yeah. So that if you really want to be a new age lawyer, you have to realize that's not the metric of success anymore, right? It's one of them, not the only one, to be fair, right? But even in that, you will have to realize that if you don't understand how technology can help you do your job better, you will not scale, because eventually these law firms will have to catch up on these things. In-house counsels will have to catch up on these things, right? They can't sit quietly on it. So you really need to understand that you will be in that foray. I mean, financial experts have done that for a long time, right? A lot of people who work in banks and things like this are very comfortable with technology because it's a part of their world. Lawyers have to take that bend as well. Yeah, I think that's what I would say. Look around you. The world has changed quite a bit.
It has, and it's changing a lot faster outside of India. So definitely look outside as well.
Yeah. There are plenty of opportunities outside. I think one disadvantage I think maybe students have now is the people leading a lot of these things are still in the previous generation, right? They haven't adopted a lot of it. So I think they're going to have a challenge fighting that. There is an in-between phase, no? They want to move forward and then these guys are still sitting a little behind. I think keep your patience through that and all the best. That's all I can say on that front. Because this is the frustrations I've heard in talking to people that I've networked with. They've openly said that, yeah, I would love to have an open mind, but nobody's letting me foray in that direction, right? This is still very traditional. I think technology in the legal tech space, people think taking a Zoom call is technology sometimes.
Yes, I think you mentioned that before. Yes, that's absolutely true. I think a lot of lawyers pride themselves for having taken Zoom calls during the pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, because they've never done that also before, right? Maybe in the one place where there's been a little bit of progress even before a lot of the tech scene bursting is probably in dealing with IP cases, right? Trademarks and all these cases, they've done a lot of things online. So if you actually see, they forayed much faster in that thing. So maybe you can take a cue from those places to see how it works. Talk to people who've been in that space, like how that's worked out. They'll give you some context on what it is.
Great. I think this was wonderful, Vaishali. Thank you so much for taking out the time. Before we part, do you have any last thoughts?
I think I learned a lot from talking to you because I didn't really distill a lot of these thoughts until someone asked me these questions. So I really enjoyed talking to you, Shreya, and I think I'm looking forward to seeing the other interviews and things beyond, seeing
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, I mean, what you're doing is pretty awesome. So thank you for thinking of me. And I hope your listeners get something out of this.
Oh, I'm sure they will. Thank you so much for taking out the time today, Vaishali. And thank you for having such a candid conversation with us.
Absolutely. This is good fun.